So today is a significant day. As you know, it's the first day of spring, as Chris so beautifully reminded us with her meditation. It's the equinox. It's a balancing point in the seasons of the planet. And today also happens to be Persian New Year. Thank you, Linda, for reminding me of that, which has been celebrated for 3,000 years, undoubtedly aligned with the seasons of the planet. And the seasons are just a reminder that our lives are constantly going through a cycle of renewal. And today's talk is about the seasons of life, but not in a way that you would normally hear that described. Because I think that we are creating countless springtimes of our soul, and that they can happen at any time. But to get there, we have to learn to go through a few falls and a few winters. And along this theme of the seasons of life, I've been reading a book called The Second Mountain by David Brooks. Notice that these are pretty close to the Ukraine flag colors. It's a wonderful book, and it's being Don is using it with the Shalom Men's Group. They're currently working on it. And that's where I got this idea, because I picked the book up, and the title, The Second Mountain, is just it's so alluring. I just had to find out what it was about. And what it's about is the two great journeys of life, the first mountain and the second mountain. And this first journey in life is one that everyone in this room is familiar with. It's the journey of climbing what David Brooks calls the first mountain. And everyone travels on this mountain because it's about thriving in the modern world. It's about being successful, finding our early selves, in a sense, making enough money to survive, putting a roof over our head. For many of us, it's about family or career, or it may be about discovering interests, hobbies, and activities that become kind of the container of our lives. This first mountain is also where we discover our identity and ego, which has its upsides and downsides. So for so many years, when someone hears David, they go, "Oh, bongo boy," David the drummer, or David the marketer. And then David becomes associated with, I have this and I have that. But is that really who I am? I think back on my life, and I think, wow, those first moments, those first mountain moments in my life were my brief marriage, establishing my career as a marketer, working from an identification standpoint. I wanted to be the fastest drummer. I wanted to be the fastest drummer I could possibly be. And I would enter all these international contests and win all this and win all that. And it was all about, I wanted to be faster than everyone else. Then building up my drum circle business and my sound healing groups was also an enjoyable endeavor. Many people start climbing that first mountain, and even after they've met their Maslow needs, so the needs of survival and a roof over your head. And, Greg Lavoie often talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those things that you have to have before you go on to the next step. But even after you have what you need, there's a temptation to see all the goodies along the way, the goodies of the ego, right? And it might look like praise I get for doing things and achieving things, and all the cool Facebook likes and accomplishments and things that are part of your resume that you can add. And, this is all an important part of growing up and individuating ourselves. But after a while, it gets out of control, because some people in the world decide to keep on collecting things on the first mountain, like money, accomplishments, possessions. They keep climbing up that mountain, gathering things, and they never capture a sense of what I call soul satisfaction. And I'm convinced that there is no top to that first mountain. There is no summit. That's an illusion. We just think that we can get to the top of that first mountain. When I get this or when I get that, I'm truly going to be happy. Well, even scientists have studied this thing called hedonic adaptation, where the moment you get one thing, you're just on to think, you're thinking of the next already. You're not really enjoying that you got the first thing. You're just on to the next achievement. I think about when a singer gets their first Grammy, they want their second Grammy, right? When we make our first desired salary, the thrill wears off very quickly, and pretty soon we're used to that salary and we're shooting for the next salary, always on to the next biggest thing. And look at the people who may have made it so far up the mountain, yet it's still not enough. I read just last night where there are 2,700 billionaires in the world now. I believe that's more than any time in history. And it's a race to see who can stay on top of that group. There's a race to see who can stay in the group of the top 100 billionaires, the top 10 billionaires. And the richest of the richest are duking it out with each other to stay the richest, or perhaps go to the moon or other things. And there's a lot of discussion around, gosh, it just seems so ego-based, especially when you see that the richest of the very rich are only giving away philanthropically less than 1% of their money because they want to hold on to these things. So the first mountain becomes a contest, not just for them, but for everybody. A contest not only of money, but of stuff and of accolades, and who's the most famous and who's the cutest and who has the nicest car and the best resume. And that culture is infectious. And if you've ever lived in Los Angeles, you can see how the culture is, that imbues itself in the culture, because every billboard is about, who made it, who got famous, who's on TV, and everybody knows somebody who's in the industry, and everybody's trying to get in. And those who are not in feel less than. I think that the first mountain is also about other interesting things. During my meditation this morning, it came to me that Putin is clearly stuck on the first mountain and looking to conquer the next thing. And Putin thinks that there's a top of the mountain, thinks that there's a summit. But if he ever gets to where he thinks that summit is, it's not going to be enough because it's ego-based. And I think that in that first mountain, we all end up to some degree bumming ourselves out over and over again, because the goals of the first mountain may not even be our goals. They may be just the goals that society, or some people call it race consciousness or social consciousness, society says this is what you should do. Your parents said this is what you should do. Your friends are doing it. Everybody, wants to be of a certain way. And sometimes you realize you're living someone else's dream. And I think there was a celebrity, it might have been Jim Carrey, that said, gosh, reaching any dream has a great chance of failure. Why not fail at your own dream instead of trying to live someone else's dream and fail at that, right? So one can stay on top, or there is no top. One can stay on this first mountain forever searching, because it's ultimately about the ego. Therefore, there is no summit, because the ego cannot be completely satiated. But some people become aware that there may be a different mountain. But regardless where you are, David Brook says that something happens to most of us as we are traversing that first mountain, if we're lucky. And that is, we fall off the mountain. We fail in some area. Sometimes it's a small failure, and sometimes it's a huge failure. Hence the word, I think this is the word where midlife crisis came from, right? I don't think that word is so popular anymore. But I think that's people who are struggling to find meaning in that first mountain, and they're falling down. Or something knocks us on our butts that we weren't expecting. Life throws us a curveball. Michael Beckwith would call this the dark night of the soul. So here we are, we're knocked down, and we're in the valley now. This is a place where we often find ourselves, but this is, I'll say it again, this is often a place where we get to find ourselves in the valley. It's a place with a lot of meaning, because we don't discover too much when everything is hunky-dory. Is that even a word anymore? We don't get to discover ourselves when everything is peachy keen. Is that a word anymore? We discover so much about ourselves when we're in the fall and winter, when we're in the valley. And this is where David Brooks, the author of The Second Mountain, references another author, Richard Rohr, who wrote a book called Falling Upwards. So if you can imagine when you're falling down off this great mountain that you've assumed your whole life, that was the mountain where all the fruits were. That was the mountain where all the avocados were, right? It's, yeah. Oops, I realized, Chris, I didn't mute you after the, I'm gonna mute you. But I like your laugh. Where was I? So this valley is a place where David Brooks says, some people discover, oh, maybe that's not my mountain after all. And maybe there is meaning in this thing falling upwards. Can you get a picture of that? It's almost like we fall down and we get back up in a higher place than where we were before. But it takes willingness, according to David Brooks, to sit in our own shadow and to dig in and to do the spiritual work. David Brooks calls this self-excavation. Isn't that an interesting picture? Usually when you hear the word excavation, you think of a bunch of archaeologists digging with toothbrushes and pulling up things and discovering things. Well, maybe there's an excavation of the soul, where we can just sit down with the pieces of our life and just kind of question things like, why do we value the things on the first mountain? And this, after we go through this valley, is where we get invited to the second mountain. David Brooks says, the first mountain is something that we strive for and we go for, we set our goals, we're gonna climb that mountain. The second mountain, he says, it finds us. And I'll describe some very interesting pictures of how that happens. Along this theme of the two mountains, I was reminded, as I was meditating this morning, of kind of like a first mountain moment for me that was pretty huge, falling down for me. And that is, I used to have a drumstick, actually two, marketed around the world from these international percussion manufacturers with my name and my signature on them. And what a hit to the ego it was, what a boost to the ego it was to walk into a music store and, say, show your friend, hey, check out my drumstick, and I remember once I was judging a marching band contest and all the kids said, you're David DeLulo? And they showed me, they all had the David DeLulo stick. And it is what it is, but it's really, it's a good thing and a bad thing. I was so young that I didn't really know how to really maintain the delicate parts of an endorsement relationship. It was in my 20s when I was battling drugs, and I metaphorically disappeared off the face of the planet. I didn't nurture my relationships. I didn't even call anybody. And after a while, those drumsticks began to disappear. So now when I see that drumstick, it's still like I've saved some of these drumsticks, and it's still like a kick to the stomach because of the ego hit of not nurturing that relationship, the ego hit of, I don't have those drumsticks in music stores anymore. But this is where I need to do continuous excavation of my own soul, because that's not where the meaning is for me. There's nothing that I want from that other than ego fulfillment. And how empty is that? So I want you to think for a moment, do you have a failure from this first mountain that's about achievement, that's about ego, where you realized you were trying to find fulfillment in something that was never going to fulfill you, or where something unexpectedly knocked you on your rear and you had to evaluate your life between the first mountain and the second mountain? So I want to focus on the second mountain. As David Brook says, it finds us. And David Brooks basically says that the second mountain, summarizing his whole book, the second mountain is about indelible joy. He calls it moral joy, but I call it indelible joy because it's one that can't be taken away. And to get to this place of indelible joy, we have to give away a certain part of ourselves. We have to give away this ego identification with ourselves. And it made me think of a song that we used to sing a lot here called I Give Myself Away. You remember that one? I Give Myself Away. And that song was all about surrender. And that is the consciousness of the valley and the consciousness of beginning the journey into the second mountain. And David Brooks says that not everyone makes it to the second mountain. Some of us don't even want to be there. We just spend the rest of our lives on the first mountain. And again, if the first mountain is building up the ego and defining the self, then the second mountain is about losing the self. I think there's a quote by Rumi that says, in order to get into the self, you've got to get out of the self, right? And I'm sure that that reminds you of the things that you experienced in India, Jesse, getting out of the self to find out more about the self. It's that self-excavation. So if I could summarize what the second mountain is about, I have to compare it to the first mountain. The first mountain is head-based. The second mountain is heart-based. It's where your journeys are the journey of heart. The first mountain is about building up the individual, and the second mountain is about building up something greater than ourselves. The first mountain is about personal happiness, and the second mountain is about lasting joy that never fades. And my theory, different than David Brooks, is that we all get to the second mountain somehow, even if it's on the last day of our lives. But those who have decided to choose a life as spiritual seekers as we in this room do, I believe are already on the second mountain, because there's no falling off this mountain. I thought it would be helpful to talk about 4 hallmarks or qualities that David Brooks says people on the second mountain have in common. And the 4 things that he says these people in the second mountain have in common are committing to one of these, one or more of these, not necessarily all of them. Committing to a vocation. And I don't mean just a job. I mean committing to a life calling. That's the first one. The second one is committing to a philosophy or a faith. The third is committing to a community. And the fourth is committing to spouse or family. And once again, the hallmark of being on the second mountain is committing to one of these things or more, not necessarily all of them. And I wanted to take a second to focus on 2 of them. The first is committing to a philosophy or faith. And I think that makes sense because all of life's biggest questions have spiritual answers. Those of us who are into scientific thinking, I'm always marveled at this fact that the questions that are asked by any of the sciences, the most profound questions, have religious answers, especially when you think about the very big and the very small. You think about cosmology and astrology, and you think about, microbiology and studying the atoms, the questions of the very big and the very small become spiritual, and so much so that there was a there's a movement of so many scientists converting to Buddhism and Hinduism, or studying world religions, or just questioning their faith when they got to their peak of their careers. David Brook says this about faith, interestingly. He says, today's faith doesn't feel like an old man with a white beard who is separating the waters. Today's faith instead feels like I am wider possibilities than I have ever imagined. And living life in the shadow of those possibilities is where reality really shimmers. Reality shimmers. I love when David Brooks said that. And so here we are in unity, and unity is both a faith and a philosophy, and it's more commonly referred to as a spiritual movement because there is no sacred text. There is no set, cemented dogma. There are only guiding principles, and that gives us room to be spiritual seekers within our movement. It gives us room to bring the God of our understanding. I know some people in this room don't like to hear the word God. They prefer to use the word spirit. Some people are very Jesus-centric in terms of where they receive God's wisdom from. And other people are more New Age. And I love that all these differences are welcome here in unity. So we're committed to this religious movement called unity. And next, David Brooks talks about commitment to a community. And this week marks a very special day. Speaking of community, it marks the second anniversary of, I was going to say, I wrote this morning, zoo services. I meant to say Zoom services. Yes, it is like a zoo sometimes. Second year of Zoom. Isn't that amazing? It happened on our first Zoom service it was March 22nd, 2020. And to me, it reminds me how far we as a community have journeyed together, and we as a community have decided that this is meaningful enough that we will create this thing no matter where it goes, no matter what it looks like. And that's just the love and the commitment that everyone has for this community. Unity is one community in your life. You can have many communities in your life, and hopefully each community gives you strength when you're weak, and it reminds you who you really are when you should forget. If you should forget. So in conclusion, I like to say that I think that part of us dances back and forth between these two mountains. Who among us does not have any ego at all, right? So we're dancing back and forth between the mountain of ego and the mountain of this lasting spiritual joy. And we're coming into the valley in between, which is, these are the seasons of our lives. The first mountain is not a bad thing. But when we think we can't find lasting happiness and we feel that it's empty there, the second mountain will pull us in more and more, because I'm convinced that's where the magic is. So briefly, let's pray for a moment. I'm so grateful for this realization, the value of the second mountain. I'm so grateful for all the lessons I've learned being on the first mountain. I'm so grateful for the lessons where I've fallen down, knowing that it wasn't just falling down, knowing that it was falling upward. So should I fall and should I fail, I will see this as falling upward. As I traverse through the seasons of life, knowing that I can always create a new spring greater than the one before. And so it is.
I sat still and beheld the glory white of the silk upon the dogwood in the early morning light, and a story told to me long ago returned to something wordless as it started to unfold before my eyes. If you wait till all is right, till black folds to white, you'll live like a blind one. And if you hold your gaze to the sky, you'll see how the night gives birth to the sun. Oh, day to night, and night to day. Isn't that the blessed way? I lay still in the deep and fertile ground as my body turns to chaos, feeding all the life around. I am home, I'm at peace and I'm at rest, and it only took one lifetime to realize I'd never left here at all. If you wait till all is right, till black folds to white, you'll live like a blind one. And if you hold your gaze to the sky, you'll see how the night gives birth to the sun. Oh, day to night, and night to day. Isn't that the blessed way? Ooh, ooh. What is love but to open to the glory that an ordinary morning makes you weep? And what is faith but to smile as the leaves change, knowing they'll return again in spring? No, day to night, and night to day. All of life comes from decay. Nothing goes and nothing stays. And isn't that the blessed way? Sure. This song is called Something Better, and it's about getting on the second mountain, getting all your ideas out of your head from that first mountain about what is going to bring you fulfillment, and allowing your soul to know it for you. Sometimes it feels like my heart is stuck in a revolving door. It can get me down so much, I don't even want to mess with it anymore. Sometimes I feel like that. Woo! This too familiar feeling, oh, I know it well, but I don't let it get too far. No, I'm too good at staying cool now. Yes, I am learning the art, and I'm getting good at letting go, yeah. Getting good at giving it over, 'cause I know it ain't in my hands. Oh, I'm getting good at letting go, yeah. Getting good at giving it over, 'cause I know, though I do not understand, my soul's always got something better planned. Hey, yeah. When the shadow comes creeping in like a thief from my past, I turn on the light by I remembering? Only my soul knows my path, and I'm getting good at letting go, yeah. Getting good at giving it over, 'cause I know it ain't in my hands. So I'm getting good at letting go, yeah. Getting good at giving it over, 'cause I know, though I do not understand, my soul's always got something better planned, and I am unburdened. Yes, I am free when I believe. Hey. If I just keep trusting, if I keep the faith, I know I'll see. When I let go, and I know when I let go, and I know that my soul's always God. Yes, my soul's always God. Oh, my soul's always God. Something better planned. Something better is always, it's always coming along. So if you find yourself in the valley, don't you worry, 'cause your soul's got something coming. It's the second mountain calling you. Do 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 do. All the good things rain down. Do 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 do.
Let's hold that beautiful feeling as we go into meditation. Gently close your eyes or gaze at that amazingly beautiful calla lily picture on your computer screen. Let's take 3 cleansing breaths together. As you continue to be conscious of your breath, with every inhale, take notice of the oxygen filling your lungs and nourishing your whole body. All of your organs and cells filled with life-giving breath. With every breath, we inhale life, and with every exhale, we release what no longer serves us. This could be old beliefs, negative emotions, illness, pain, or disease. Spring is the time of renewal, new life, new beginnings. Visualize yourself outdoors or in the middle of that beautiful calla lily field on the screen, maybe in a beautiful garden, a meadow, your own backyard, or a walk through your neighborhood or on your favorite nature trail. Feel the breeze on your skin, the fresh, crisp air surrounding you and wrapping you in a feeling of peace and gratitude for this beautiful day. You become aware of the sense of spring as you smell the flowers in bloom: jasmine, roses, lilacs. Perhaps you smell the richness of the earth after a fresh spring rain. What other scents are you aware of? Inhale and exhale, taking in the joys and the blessings of spring. Move on to the awareness of your sense of hearing. Are birds singing? Bees buzzing? Do you hear the breeze moving through the leaves in the trees? Maybe the sounds of children laughing as they play outside. What other experiences do you associate with spring and renewal? As those memories come to mind, bring them down from your mind and down into your heart. Surround them with love and gratitude as we go into the silence. Returning to the present, join me in taking 3 conscious deep breaths. Inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. We conclude our meditation with this affirmation by Kyle Gray. Every breath I take restores me in every way that is right for me. I am embodied, connected, and in touch with who I truly am. And so it is. Namaste.